Okay, there may never be a better Tatas Tuesday topic than Pamela Anderson saying porn is for losers. Pamela Anderson did not do this op-ed in the Wall Street Journal alone. She co-wrote this commentary with an Orthodox rabbi. And this is relevant specifically because Orthodox Judaism has a particular thing about modesty in dress for both men and women, but like so many other ancient faiths, it affects women more. It says that you're not supposed to dress in any way that attracts attention. Pamela Anderson, people. Now, I don't know for certain that Shmuley Boteach has I don't know if it's Boteach or Boteach, probably Boteach, but I don't know if he subscribes or if he's a neo-Orthodox rabbi who relaxes some of the stuff. But this is the moral tradition that we're coming from. This article was written in the context of the Anthony Weiner sexting again scandal. It's an article about the corrosive effects of pornography on a man's soul, on his ability to function as a husband, and by extension, a father. Well, this is a real subset of the male experience. You have to be both a husband and a father. And, you know, there are some men who aspire to be neither, and that's perfectly okay. But this article is full of nonsense. Nonsense. Okay? This paragraph, this think of the children paragraph drives me crazy. We are a guinea pig generation for an experiment in mass debasement that few of us would have ever consented to, and whose full nefarious impact may not be known for years. How many families will suffer? How many marriages will implode? How many talented men will scrap their most important relationships and careers for a brief onanistic thrill? Onanistic. If you're wondering what that means, it's the onanism is an archaic term for masturbation. How many children will propel warp speed into the dark side of adult sexuality by forced exposure to their father's profanations? And if you think that Pamela Anderson wrote a single word of that paragraph, maybe the word guinea pig, because she likes animals. Maybe. I cannot see her using the term brief onanistic thrill or forced exposure to their father's profanations. But then they get into science. The statistics already available are terrifying. According to data provided by the American Psychological Association, porn consumption rates are between 50 and 99% among men. Only 50%? That's interesting. And 30% to 86% among women, with the former group meaning men often reporting less satisfactory intimate lives with their wives or girlfriends as a result of the consumption. By contrast, many female fans of pornography tend to prefer a less explicit variety and report that it improves their sexual relationships. So now they're already capitulating, okay? The idea that porn may be beneficial to women, but not to men. And the fact that there's less explicit versions of porn? I'm not sure what that even means. 9% of porn users said they tried unsuccessfully to stop. 9%! 9%! And they compare it to the dependency rate among those who try marijuana. And the whole thing about marijuana, the whole argument towards legalizing marijuana is it's not very addictive. It's not very addictive, but it gets better. The incidence of porn addiction will only spiral as the children now being raised in an environment of wall-to-wall digitized sexual images become adults, inured to intimacy and in need of even greater graphic stimulation. They are the crack babies of porn. The crack babies of porn. What does that say about Pamela Anderson's own children, first of all? And trust me, Rabbi Shmuley, I deal with people who have comments that say, must fap. They are not inured to intimacy. The people I talk to crave emotional and mental intimacy with people. They want to get to know people. And yes, that's anecdotal, but you're calling them the crack babies of porn based on comparisons to marijuana stats. Like, this is manipulation of the most blatant kind. All people are unique individuals. Oh, thanks for saying that now after you called kids of people who do web porn the crack babies of porn. And we can be sure that Mr. Wiener's problems are at least in part a matter of his personal psychopathologies. Ya think? Ya think? Yet, goodbye, individualism. This behavior squares with what we have observed with all too many men, especially in the US or other Western countries that enjoy liberal values and material prosperity. Oh, those good old liberal values like religious freedom? Rabbi Shmuley, you know what happens to Jews in countries that don't have religious freedom? That's a video for another time. As a person who has like meat and dairy labeled on my cupboards, I'm all for those liberal values that encourage religious freedom. I don't want to bore you guys with the rest of this word salad. And you know, it basically concludes with the idea that there should be a sensual revolution that would replace pornography with eroticism, the alloying of sex with love, of physicality with personality, of the body's mechanics with imagination, of orgasmic release with binding relationships. So basically they're advocating for fanfiction.net. Before they took the mature content out of it. They're advocating for slash fiction. Yay! I don't think they realize that. But then at the end, they blow their whole argument that maybe we should be putting emotion back into porn with, simply put, we must educate ourselves and our children to understand that porn is for losers, a boring, wasteful, and dead-end outlet for people too lazy to reap the ample rewards of healthy sexuality. Says a former Playboy model and a guy who subscribes to a form of religion that openly represses the sex urge. Onanistic people. So, what's the truth? Now, first of all, I should say that this op-ed has been resoundingly panned, even by CNN, who doesn't seem to find a piece of moral outrage it doesn't like. But what is the truth? Here's an article from Scientific American, which I think we can trust Scientific American on issues of science much more than a religious scholar and Pamela Anderson. And, you know, no disrespect to Pamela Anderson and what she's chosen to do with her life. It makes me sad that she is now seemingly unable to stand up and be proud of what she managed to accomplish, giving joy to a lot of men by running in a red bathing suit. I mean, what is that if not sexuality divorced from emotion? There's no committed relationship to watching an episode of Baywatch. And it's sad to me that people like Rabbi Shmuley have decided to encourage her to be shamed of her, pardon the pun, body of work. But let's look at the actual science. For most people, pornography use has no negative effects, and it may even deter sexual violence. Whoa, wait, that's not what Rabbi Shmuley told me. What? Rabbi, what's going on? Overconsumption and what they call porn addiction seems to cause relationship problems. It's disordered behavior. Any disordered behavior. If you have an unnatural obsession with cheese, it's going to cause relationship problems, right? Have you ever eaten too much cheese? It is not a pretty thing. But what about more casual exposure typical of most porn users? Contrary to what many people believe, recent research shows that modern pornography consumption does not make users more aggressive, promote sexism, or harm relationships. If anything, some researchers suggest exposure to pornography might make some people less likely to commit sexual crimes. So, breaking it down, does porn harm women? If you've seen my article on the second wave of feminism and the Dorksiders, you guys know where this idea that porn harms women comes from. It comes from this idea that it encourages sexism, raises sexual expectations, and therefore harms relationships. And then there was some stuff going on in the 1970s, quick version, where women were coerced or exploited into participating in pornography by their partners, and this led to, a backlash against porn. Now, I think we can all agree that consent is a big deal on this stuff, but the data doesn't support the argument that moderate pornography consumption harms relationships or supports violence against women or incites violence against women. That's the word. There's a difference. It's a moral issue, not a factual issue, which is why I, off the top, talked about the religious dress requirements for Orthodox Jews like Rabbi Shmuley. It does matter, because when you look at scientific data, it takes real work to look at it from a purely scientific perspective and not filter it through a moral lens. And someone who makes their money off of morality cannot be expected to take a fact-based approach to something. And we saw that in the word salad gymnastics. This guy vaulted over semantics and landed in Pamela Anderson's vegan salad bar. Scientists found that users of mainstream nonviolent pornography were neither more nor less sexually satisfied than non-users. Both groups felt the same degree of intimacy in their current or recent relationships and shared the same range of sexual experiences. Now, this study was done in Croatia, which is an important thing to note simply because attitudes towards pornography and the shame associated with pornography are connected to the greater cultural views of pornography that someone lives in. When it came to violent or fetishist porn, and I wish they'd define that, because what does that mean? The groups diverged. Consumers of violent or fetishist porn appeared to masturbate more frequently, have more sexual partners over the course of their life, and experience slightly less relationship intimacy than their non-violent porn viewing counterparts. Regular pornography use does not seem to encourage sexism either. The survey respondents who were the most sexist in this study in Australia were generally older men who voted for a right-wing political party, lived in a rural area, had a lower level of formal education. The amount of pornography the subjects consumed did not predict whether they would hold negative attitudes towards women. Wow, a study found that those greater cultural things that people are involved in have more to do with attitudes than consumption of porn. Common sense rules. Now, there's a nuance here, though, because we talk a lot on this channel about benevolent sexism. And this is, I think, the most insidious gender issue of our time, because benevolent sexism not only is at the root of a lot of these ongoing, lingering Western problems when it comes to the female experience, it's also at the root of things like what's called disposable male syndrome. And the idea that men should go out and risk life and limb for things and women are not expected to. That's because what benevolent sexism is the belief that women should be protected from harm. And they did find that consumers of pornography were more likely to believe this than non-consumers. And the difficult thing of talking with benevolent sexism is that the impulses are absolutely good. The thing that happens with benevolent sexism is you can't treat someone as an equal who you feel you have to protect at all times to your own detriment. Now, that's not the same as going, I have to protect this person in this instance, but then there are times it's okay to protect me. The problem with benevolent sexism is the idea that it's supposed to be all one way the whole time. Men are supposed to protect women, not people are supposed to protect people. That's the big issue here. Now, we'll get back to that in a bit, hopefully, depending on time. Let's go through the rest of the facts. So, perhaps the most serious accusation against pornography is that it incites sexual aggression. But not only do rape statistics suggest otherwise, some experts believe the consumption of pornography may actually reduce the desire by offering a safe, private outlet for deviant sexual desires. Now, this is somewhat controversial, I will admit. Rates of rapes and sexual assault in the U.S. are at their lowest levels since the 1960s. That's a very telling statistic just because the definition of rape in the 1960s was far more strict. So the fact that the rates are the lowest levels since the 1960s and the definition of rape is more all-encompassing, it means that fewer people are actually getting raped since the 1960s. And the same goes for other countries. Access to pornography grew in once restrictive Japan, China, Denmark in the past 40 years. Rape statistics plummeted. States with the least internet access between 1980 and 2000, and therefore the least access to internet pornography, increased a 53% increase in rape incidents, whereas the states with the most access experienced a 27% drop in the number of reported rapes. And that's from 2006. That's very interesting because when you look at data that big, then you get out of sort of the sample size argument. That's a fascinating statistic. And obviously people are like, oh my God, it's just like video games. Yes, a lot of overlap here. But that is very interesting. Sorry, Rabbi Shmuley. It's important to note, and I want to make sure we get this, that these associations are just that, associations. They do not prove that pornography is the cause of the observed crime reductions. Nevertheless, the trends just don't fit with the theory that rape and sexual assault are in part influenced by pornography. I think at this point we can say the evidence just isn't there and that it's time to retire this belief. Now, yes, full disclosure, this was written in 2011. The stats haven't changed. You know, some people have said that pornography is protective. Wow. Pornography is a safe space. But there's one caveat, and this came up earlier and I wanted to talk about this. The idea that consuming porn is wrong can have a negative effect on people who like porn. And this was based on a study in 2009, so fairly recent. A lot of these studies are done on undergrad students, which I wish they were more. So again, this is just food for thought. This is not the final word. The idea that they studied undergrads, whether they considered their pornography consumption problematic. For example, causing intrusive sexual thoughts or difficulty finding like-minded sex partners. It turns out that among porn viewers, the amount of porn each subject consumed had nothing to do with his or her mental state. What mattered most was whether the subjects tried to control their sexual thoughts and desires. The more they tried to clamp down on their urge for sex or porn, the more likely they were to consider their own pornography use a problem. The findings suggest that suppressing the desire to view pornography, for example, for moral or religious reasons, might actually strengthen the use for it and exacerbate sexual problems. It's all about the personal views and personal values. In other words, the effects of pornography, positive or negative, have little to do with the medium itself and everything to do with the person viewing it. Individualism for the win. Woohoo! So we're back to this issue of shame and shaming gendered behavior, which is what we talk about on Tatas Tuesday all the freaking time. And I know I spend a lot of time fighting the, both political extremes. And there's a lot of crossover, right? But I mean these regressive attitudes that want us to be shamed for perfectly healthy human urges. And I think that there's something to be said about allowing men to express the desire for intimacy in the male space. I think that's super important because intimacy isn't just about sex. It's about hugging your kids and feeling emotional closeness to the people around you. And I think there's so much pressure on men to prove their masculinity through sexual conquest that they're denied the benefits of intimacy. But that doesn't come through porn. I mean, God, that starts way young. That conditioning thought starts super young. The idea that ideal masculinity is linked to aggression. And so there's something to be said about more emotional content for men. And none of this has anything to do with porn. And it has everything to do with pop culture. Porn is cool. More and more porn is produced by women and for women. And that doesn't mean men can't watch it. But porn is not for losers. Porn is just for people curious about sex.